Hi, my name is Sarah, and today I'm going to talk about Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro and Vagabonds by Jingfang. It was not on purpose that I read these two books together, but I'm so happy that I did. They don't totally overlap in precise themes, but the feeling of both of them is very similar. I would count both of them as very heavily literary tilted dystopian novels. Yeah, they're both sci-fi. They feel a lot more like a contemporary novel in a lot of ways. I've actually tried filming this review, I'd say at least 10 different times now, and I have a hard time scrunching down the massiveness that both of these books are. Both of these books have a ton of layers to them. And going through in a very quick review, I realized it's very hard to do them both justice. But I'm gonna try again, so bear with me. Starting out with Vagabonds. The setup to Vagabonds is that it's actually a Chinese sci-fi book. And as I was doing research for this video, it was really interesting going down the path of hearing the whole history of Chinese sci-fi and comparing that against like American sci-fi and British sci-fi. I don't know why, and this is a total aside that doesn't have anything to do really with the video, but it's so interesting how different cultures take spins on the same topic. Like if you like go watch videos on like British humor versus American humor, the whole anthropology of how you end up having two totally different ways of doing the same thing is just so interesting to me. Anyhow, back to the review itself. This book is beautiful. The writing style of it is very ephemeral. It is almost wispy. When I imagine the scenes in my head, I almost have like this Valencia filter on. It feels like an old-timey movie in some ways, even though it's set 200 years in the future. The setup of the book is that there is a group of students from Mars, which is an ex-colony of Earth, that go to Earth for I think like 5 years and then are now returning back to Mars. Earth has become this hyper-capitalistic society. And particularly, as I assume material good costs have gone down, the importance of intellectual property and the content that you create is becoming more and more important. Where you contrast that against Mars, which is a socialist, collectivist society that really focuses on sustaining a population on a completely inhospitable planet. While you can go down a whole rabbit hole on the allegory between Mars being a collectivist socialist society and Earth being hyper-capitalistic versus Western society and Chinese society, the path I was really interested in taking was the tilt that she had on creativity. As I mentioned before, down on Earth, intellectual property and the content you create has become super important. Everyone cares about IP rights and technology that can secure IP rights, things that can make you more secure in the property that you own, has only become more important. While on Mars, they store all of their creative ventures in basically a giant database that anyone's welcome to use and anyone's welcome to see what you publicly put out there. You have a whole storyline of a filmmaker from Earth that comes back to Mars, find works of his mentors that he left back on Mars, and just the layers you can unravel there about what it means as an individual to produce content, whether it's for the world as the purpose being to sell it, or as it is for yourself and to organically share it, was very, very interesting. The next kind of layer that I was particularly enamored by was just the economic pieces that the author brought out. The fact that she kind of predicts that IP is going to become more and more important in the future, I think is totally on base. If you think about how things are today, there is a ton of content out there. There are a ton of movies out there. And so many of the biggest businesses that we have, at least in the United States, are supplying content, supplying entertainment to people. The third piece that I was really interested by was the fact that she kind of had this message that it doesn't totally matter what your system is, that people are able to corrupt even the most well set up of systems. There was a whole passage in there where I remember where she basically just said that there was societal waste both on Earth and on Mars, and that it happened just because of the bureaucracy and just because of the setup that there was. The incentives that we put into our societies and that we put into the setup of how things work play so much bigger role than oftentimes is given credit for. The final thing that I would like to note on this book was the characters. You'll notice that I didn't spend a ton of time talking about the individual characters themselves. The characters weren't, in my mind, designed for you to really get invested in, if that makes sense. A lot of times the characters felt more like a vector for the commentary to come through on, which for me on dystopians, I actually don't mind. I don't mind if the characters don't have very much characterization to them. I mean, don't get me wrong, you learned a lot of interesting things about each of the characters, but because of the wispy feel of the novel, because of the fact that it kind of felt too light to really get your arms around, the characters themselves didn't have like the solidity that made them real. That is in no way a downside in my mind. It kept the novel having that very atmospheric feel to me, but it is something to realize. This isn't a guns a-blazing robot fight sci-fi. This reads so much more like a contemporary novel. And I would warn you of that before you go into this 600-page monster. Moving on to Never Let Me Go. Never Let Me Go is a dystopian that basically starts out with our main character, Kathy, going through later in life and reminiscing on her childhood. As a child, she grew up in basically this large boarding school with a number of other children. The two that we focus on the most are Tommy and Ruth, who are Kathy's two best friends. Very similarly to Vagabonds, there is this feel that you can't really get your whole around the concept of the novel until well into the novel itself. You can definitely tell from page 1 that the narrator's keeping secrets from you because secrets were cut from her in her childhood, and it all just sort of slowly gets revealed. I think about 30 pages into the book, I had like a knack that the twist was what it was going to be, but it took about like halfway into the book for them actually to spell that out. And I actually think that was really well done. The setup of this novel is pretty grim. The characters' fates are grim, and they're starting out this path as children, and the adults around them realize the path they're on. And so, of course, they're not going to reveal the big bad fate that each of these children have in front of them any sooner than need be. One of the interesting things when I watched a interview of the author was that he said that he was mainly making a book about loss and about what you do when you know you don't have a ton of time left, and that the setup for the novel was more of a device in order to get that feeling. And you can totally see that come through in the novel. This novel very much reads and focuses on the interpersonal relationship between all the characters versus the broad societal thing that they're stuck in. One of the more interesting pieces is the fact that a lot of the novel focuses around what makes a person a person. And similar to Vagabonds, there's this interesting thing that it actually really involves creativity, which I feel like a lot of dystopians don't really do. So throughout a large portion of the novel, creativity, self-expression are really explored as to its relationship with making yourself human. Another really interesting aspect tied in along with the theme of loss is regrets. And the fact that your childhood makes you the adult that you are, and reconciling what you did as a child that you might not be proud of today or as a teenager, and reconciling how that made you into the adult you are. I ended this novel crying, and all I can say, it was beautiful, it was heart-wrenching, and one of the most unique dystopian novels I've read in a very long time. So that is Never Let Me Go and Vagabonds. I highly recommend both of these books, and I actually specifically highly recommend doing both of these books at the same time. If any of you have read either of these books, I would love to hear your thoughts. I really enjoyed both of them, but would love to hear any of the themes or pieces that really stuck out to you. Overall, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching.